to Victress FM, brought to you by Victress Entrepreneurs. Here's your host and single mum, entrepreneur and brain injury survivor, Michelle Williams.
Hello and a huge welcome to the very first episode of Victress FM, where every week I'll be introducing you to inspiring women who have gone after their dreams and refuse to give up even in the face of extreme adversity. We'll be diving into her victories and her defeats and discovering the lessons that she's learned along the way, all with the aim of inspiring you to step into your own unique power to create a business and life that you love. This week I was joined by Maria Marklove, who is a high performance and mental resilience coach. Maria supports her clients with strategies to help them crush their goals and develop peak performance no matter what obstacles are in their path. And in this episode, we talk about what steps we can all take to overcome huge challenges in our lives, no matter what our circumstances. There is honestly so much value in this episode, so I hope that you really enjoy it. Hi Maria, it is so good to have you here on the Victress FM podcast. I'd really like to welcome you and thank you for joining us today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Michelle. It's really great to be here.
Well, I'm really excited to talk to you more because obviously we met quite recently at Chris Ducker's Youthpreneur Summit, and I was really interested in what you do because I know that you described to me that you're a high performance and mental resilience coach. Which I was really interested in because obviously the whole vision and ethos of Victress Entrepreneurs is all about really celebrating women's triumph over adversity. And I really want to inspire women that we all have a unique power to achieve incredible success in our lives, but it is down to us at the end of the day, which I think really links into what you do with regard to sort of high performance and mental resilience. So if you don't mind, I'm really interested in finding out a little bit more, firstly, about you and your own backstory, and really sort of where you've been to sort of get to where you are today. So is it okay to share a little bit of your story with us?
Absolutely. So the first thing is that I grew up in bad circumstances, let's put it that way. So my mum is an alcoholic, and some of my earliest memories were quite traumatic for me, and it took me many years to get over them and to process what had really happened. And so I spent probably the first 15 or so years of my life completely depressed and wondering how on earth I could ever be happy and what happiness even meant. So to escape from my home, I put all of my effort into school, and maths was the subject that made sense for me, so I just put all of my energy into mathematics. And then when I got to university, finally I had escaped my home, basically. But that was the point where I then got into an abusive relationship with a man. I developed eating disorder, and I just hit a very, very low point in my life over Christmas. I was just about to start a Ph.D. in maths at that point, and I realised that I had very little option going forward. It was either turn my life around, put all of my energy into making myself something better, because the current life I had was just not acceptable to me. Originally I was anorexic, but that had turned into binge eating. I was in an abusive relationship. I was completely depressed every day. And so I hit this point where I thought, I actually cannot go on like this. So I'm either going to turn my life around, or I'm just going to kill myself. Like that is it. So yeah. I was in this position of, it is all or nothing now. Like I've put all of my cards on the table. I'm just going all in because I can't face this life as it currently stands. And I know that people don't all live like this, so there's got to be an answer. I must be doing something different to other people who are living well. And that took me on the journey to find out what that meant. You know, what does success meant to me? How could I be happier? And that really just was a big process of change. And from then on, that was about 9 years ago. And I've been studying psychology ever since. So I got my Ph.D. in maths, and now I've been studying psychology and helping people do and be more.
That's amazing. And obviously the story, everything you've been through, obviously, your childhood and everything, really traumatic, which obviously I think then perhaps spiraled down to some of the other things that you talked about with the anorexia and the abusive relationship. But having met you, obviously, at the Youpreneur Summit, I saw you a very positive person. You were out there on stage dancing, and I know you've gone on to achieve great success with your business here. And so I'm just really interested in, obviously you recognised that you needed to make a change, which is amazing. And, so what steps did you then go through to actually make that change?
Yeah, so as you rightly pointed out, you need that desire to change. You have to recognise what you want in your life and basically get that leverage on yourself. You've got to make change a must. Otherwise, it's so easy to just continue on as you are. It's got to be, a definite thing that you absolutely want to change. And I'm not saying you have to go to the lowest of the low point that I did to be all or nothing, but you need to have enough desire in yourself that change is a necessity. It's not just, maybe one day. It's got to be, no, this is unacceptable to me. And quite often to do that, I would visualize the future. If I'm looking back on my deathbed, looking back at my life, what do I actually want to be looking back on? Do I want to say, I've spent 60 years in complete misery? Or do I want to say, despite the odds, I triumphed because I never gave up. I was just so persistent, so resilient that I put everything in. And that was ultimately what I wanted when I look back. I want to say that, I wasn't necessarily dealt all of the best hands, but I played the hands to my advantage anyway, and I played well. Yeah.
And do you think, certainly from my own experience, I've been dealt some pretty challenging hands as well. I won't go into the details of all of that on this podcast, but some of those things involve sort of pregnancy loss of 2 babies, single motherhood, brain aneurysm, nearly died from a brain hemorrhage. But at the end of the day, you can either choose to play the victim, or you can choose to be a victress of your own life and decide how you respond, can't you, to what happens in your life. And I think what I found, certainly when I was going through some of the toughest moments of my life, the more I focused on the negative things, the worse things became for me. And actually, if you focus too much on those negative things, then you're using up all of your energy on completely, things that are not going to move your life forward in a positive way. So I personally took the decision that I wouldn't focus on anything in my life that wasn't positive and which I couldn't influence or control, and I would only focus on things that would actually move my life forward in a positive direction. So from your own point of view, obviously you recognised that you wanted change and you took that decision to make that change. So, and you also talked about visualisation, which again, I think is a very important thing, that we have to have a very clear vision of what we want to achieve out of life and, really think about what is our why, the thing that we want to do, sort of really why do we want to do it and what's motivating us to do that, and to really have a clear vision of that and to set goals towards achieving that, that ultimate vision, I guess. So what's your view on that?
I completely agree with what you're saying in terms of take ownership of your life, okay? No one is dealt amazing hands. Everyone has their own struggle. And you can either, as you say, be a victim of that, or you can empower yourself. And it's totally, the choice is yours. Because I learned, when I decided to turn my life around, one of the first things I learned was about mindfulness and meditation. And I learned that the thoughts that I'm having consciously, and even subconsciously, these thoughts are just habitual and they're not necessarily the truth. They are literally just things that I have been telling myself. It's the stories we create. And humans are amazing because we have this imagination, we have this narrative we can tell ourselves, and that it makes us be able to achieve incredible things. We can go to the moon because someone has imagined that it's possible to get in a rocket and fly out of orbit. I mean, it's incredible what we can achieve when we use our imagination.
Absolutely, yeah.
Equally, we can use that imagination just to destroy ourselves. It can, it's really a tool, and it's how best we use it. So as you say, focusing on the self-talk is really important, and knowing that these are just, not necessarily the truth. These are just opinions, and not really getting attached to those thoughts. They're not necessarily your thoughts. They're just noise sometimes, and you get to choose what story you take ownership of.
Yeah, and I think we're referring here to sometimes those stories are in our mind due to past experiences that we've had. But sometimes even if we've had, I had a lovely childhood, loving parents, and 4 siblings. But for some reason, I grew up with quite low self-esteem and incredibly shy. But I think that's because although I was in a really loving family, I compared myself, I think, to my older siblings because they were all amazingly good at different things. And I thought, well, what am I good at? But the thing is, I was the youngest sibling, so I was comparing myself to, siblings that were far older than me. So of course they were better at certain things. But that, I think, fed into my own self-esteem and my own beliefs about what I was capable of. So I think sometimes we tell ourselves, lies, don't we, really? Like you said, stories that just simply aren't true. And if we continue to tell ourselves those stories, then it really doesn't serve us, and it's not going to be the best thing for us. So it's really about changing the attitudes that we hold about ourselves, isn't it?
The attitude is so important. In fact, I had a very similar thing. So I'm the youngest as well. So I would compare myself to, my siblings 6 years older than me. It doesn't really make sense when you're 6 years old. That's twice your age. So it's, it makes sense that he would be a lot better than me at certain things. But, no one is blaming the child or the adult, for the things that they have, the story they've told themselves. Because we're all trying to make sense of the world, and basically our conscious mind is receiving all of this information in the form of light energy, sound, touch, taste, smell, and we're passing it through the filter that we have basically created in our minds. And this filter is basically our belief system and how we've made sense of the world given all of this data we've had. So it is stories, and the thing is, everyone's receiving this same information, but we're all creating different stories at the same situation. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I think sometimes even people that you may look at from the outside and they come across as being very positive and everything, everybody's fighting their own battles, aren't they, that you don't know about. I think everybody's got their own challenges, even if you don't know about it. But I think I think it will be a very rare person that doesn't have self-doubt or fear, or can I do this, or who am I to do this? So how can we go about changing that narrative and changing those opinions that we hold, those fears and those self-doubts? What can we actually do about that?
Well, I think there's a great saying that the only people who don't have problems are already in the graveyard, right?
Yeah.
So, actually having problems is a sign of life. As hard as that may seem and sound, if you're going through some really difficult times, it is actually the sign of life. Having fears, having feelings, you are actually alive right now, and it is beautiful. If you can find that beauty in the struggle, that is the absolute path forward. And that is very, very hard sometimes when you have all of these fears and doubts. I find Go on.
Sorry, I was just going to say, I think also when you're going through a very challenging time and you are feeling that low, sometimes it's difficult to see the positives. But I don't know about you, but sometimes some of the things that happened in my life, that when I've looked back years later, I think, oh, do you know what? That was actually a lesson for me. I've learned from that. But I think sometimes you have to look for the lessons, don't you? And you know, and try to turn the negatives into a positive sometimes. But I think, again, that perhaps has to be a choice, and that has to be down to your own mindset. I don't know how you feel about that.
Definitely agree with you. But I would say sometimes that does come later. You know, when you're in the midst of a problem, it's very, very difficult to be joyful and say, oh, I wonder what positive thing's going to come out of this. If you can eventually train that, and it's great to keep that level of awareness. But if you're not used to that, then it's very, very difficult to not get caught up in all of the emotions, fear, doubt, and just the general problems of, you know, how am I going to get out of this? And I would also say that you don't have to be completely positive all of the time. I think there's a lot of advice out there saying you've just got to be positive, you know, just everything will solve itself. And I always found that it felt like I was lying to myself when I was just trying to adopt a positive mindset. And I think it's totally okay to acknowledge your fears and your doubts and your uncertainties. The way that I acknowledge them is to write them down. I find journaling just so useful. So writing them out, getting them out of my head, and then objectively looking at them and saying, okay, is this true? Is this thought useful? Is it going to help me move forward? Would someone who is already successful, where, you know, your definition of success is your own, but is someone who already has this thing that I want, would they have this thought? Would they have this belief? And if not, then I don't need to attach myself to it, because, as I said earlier, everything is a story. We're just telling ourselves things from habits, from the way we've constructed our own reality, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that you've spoken about the importance of developing your mental faculties. I think you talk about 5 mental faculties. So, you know, what are those, and why are they so important?
So there's 5 mental faculties, and these are perception, will, reason, imagination, memory, and intuition. And each one of these can be developed. So there are other things that people talk about as mental faculties, but these are like the absolute basic ones. Everything else stems from these. And I think doing this will allow you to ask better questions of yourself. So when you, for example, if you are coming across a problem, the quality of your question is really going to determine the quality of your outcome. So if you keep asking yourself, you know, why am I so pathetic? Why am I so lazy? Why am I so fat? Or whatever is going on. These are terrible questions to ask yourself, because they're automatically setting up a negative spin. Whereas if you ask, you know, how would someone else think about this situation? What would their point of view be? Can I adopt a different perception? Why might this not be true? These are much more empowering questions. And so if you're able to develop these faculties, like a different perception, that's going to help you take another view from the outside. If you're able to develop your imagination, then you can visualize yourself in a different way. And really what we think about, we become. So if we think of certain things, we're going to basically increase our probability of becoming that, because we are what we think about. And when if you increase your will, that's going to help you with your resilience. It's going to help you get up every single time you fall down, because you will fall down.
Oh, absolutely. And I do think that certainly perseverance, your will, your determination, they're so important, aren't they, in anything that you're trying to achieve in life. You know, you've got to have a goal. First of all, you've got to have a vision, and then you've got to have the dedication, the motivation, the perseverance to actually keep going towards that goal, whatever that goal may be in your life. yeah, but I think some people perhaps have got sort of a natural sort of perseverance, but how can you know, if you're somebody that perhaps hasn't got that, what can you do to sort of flex that muscle?
Yeah, everything is habit, basically. So our mind is very plastic. So just like muscles and training your body in the gym, they'll grow bigger the more you use them. There are certain aspects of your mind that also grow bigger the more you use them. So the neural pathways associated will strengthen, and you'll be more likely to develop a stronger habit. Now, some people are more genetically inclined to do things. So someone might have a really vivid imagination. That might just be how they've always been as a kid. That doesn't mean that you can't develop your own imagination through repetition, through practice, and ultimately through habit. So, you know, the will is the same, resilience is the same. It's all about getting on top of your self-talk and implementing habits that are going to serve you.
Yeah.
I really think everything is repetition, even the way you talk to yourself. So if you're currently stuck in negative self-talk, that's just because you're very well practiced.
Yeah. That's become a habit in itself, hasn't it?
Exactly. So you can change that habit and start becoming aware of the thoughts you're telling yourself. And you know, literally writing them out on paper really, really helps. And then you can look at them and start to adopt a new habit of questioning those thoughts that come up, of not getting so attached to them.
And I think that's a great idea, journaling, actually writing these things down, because I think sometimes otherwise we just hold them in our head, and then the sort of the false belief that we have with sort of reinforces it. But if you get it down on paper, write it down and actually question it, you know, and then you can actually make sense of, you know, is this actually real? You know, or am I just telling a story to myself? Like, I think it's really powerful, isn't it, to write things down?
I think so. I have found it to be invaluable in my life.
Definitely. And I think it sort of it's something that I haven't really done sort of earlier, you know, something I've only been doing quite recently, to be honest, but it is so powerful. And I'm perhaps somebody that tends to keep everything in my head, and it's only the fact that having had a brain hemorrhage that I can only store so much information. So I have to actually write things down now, and I found it a really powerful exercise. And you know, I myself, like I said, everybody has fears and self-doubts. And when I have those things now, I do write them down. I actually question them. You know, is this true? Or can I do something about this? You know, what can I do to overcome this fear? Or is it even a real fear anyway? And sometimes I find that actually coming out of your comfort zone is the best thing that you can possibly do, because otherwise you just stay stuck. You know, we can all be, you know, starting a podcast, for instance, for me, that seemed a terrifying thing to do. But sometimes, you know, and I was like, well, I can't do this. But the fact is, we all have the ability to do whatever we want to do. We just really need to believe it and take action towards doing these things sometimes, don't you think?
Completely agree. We are capable of so much more than we know, which is why I really think using your imagination is so valuable, because I mean, we went to the moon, for heaven's sake. That is a complicated problem to solve. If humanity can do that, there is so much that we can achieve. And I think really important question to ask when you're stuck in fear is, what is the cost of inaction? If I don't do this, how will I feel? Because yes, it's scary to stand on the edge of this cliff, before a bungee jump or something. It's terrifying, but sometimes you've just got to jump. You've got to know, and you've got to trust that you can do it, that, you know, the rope's going to hold you.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes, you know, you've talked about habits and repetition. You know, if there's something that you want to do and you're fearful of it, well, the way to get good at it is to keep doing it and practicing it, and then it's going to become like second nature then as well, isn't it?
Exactly. So, everything is about practice. So even overcoming fear, stepping into discomfort, leaning into it, this is also a habit that you can practice. And you know, that people start at different levels. So like my aunt at the moment is terrified of leaving the house because she's got herself into this place where it's too scary to even go outside. And so for her, you have to ratchet all of these things right down. So, leaning into discomfort for her might just be opening the door and like feeling the breeze through her hair. And that might be enough for the day. And then you build it up from there. So people, it's very important not to compare yourself to other people. We're all going on different journeys through this, and you've got to scale things back and just make a task like so simple that you can't say no to it. So like, can I open the door? Okay, I can open the door today.
Yeah, exactly. It's about what's the next step for you personally. It's about, I think, coming out of your comfort zone, overcoming fear is all about taking gradual steps, isn't it? And it's not going so far out of your comfort zone. It's just gradually coming out of your comfort zone, and then again and again, and that's all really how we learn and how we grow. I think, and certainly that's how it's been for me in my personal and my professional life as well.
Definitely. Like the reason we set ourselves these goals, and quite often that's just bait to make us act, because actually the process of the goal is where the joy comes from. It's where the learning comes from. It's where struggle is, and overcoming that struggle, growing into a new person. That's what I think life is about. The goal is just the bait to get us to higher and higher levels, but it's really when we struggle well, that is where the gold is.
Yeah.
When we face a problem and we overcome it and we become this new person, or not totally a new person, but we grow.
Absolutely.
That's where happiness lies for me.
I totally agree with you, and this is really where my whole vision for Victress Entrepreneurs comes from, because we talked a little bit earlier about success. What is what is the definition of success? Well, everybody's got a different definition of success. What's success for me is going to be completely different for somebody else. But for me, as an entrepreneur, I've been running my own businesses for the past 17 years. But what I love about entrepreneurship, it isn't actually the pot of gold at the end. I've never been interested in being a millionaire or something, but what I love is actually the personal development that you go through as an entrepreneur, because it really does force you to come out of your comfort zone, try new things that you've never tried before, learn new skills. And I certainly know that is where I found myself. Certainly having gone through some of the things that I've been through in my life, which obviously includes a divorce, being a mum. I think sometimes as a mum you kind of lose your identity. You're not you're always referred to as Harvey's mum or Elliot's mum, and then going having a long marriage, going through a divorce, you kind of lose sense of who you are, and also lose a lot of confidence. That certainly happened for me anyway. But where I really discovered who I was and what I was capable of was through my entrepreneurial journey. And I think, again, one of my struggles was being a single parent. I had to make my business work. There was no choice. I had to keep a roof over my children's head. I had to put food on the table. So I had a business and I had to make it work. So kind of, although it seemed like a real struggle at the time, I look back now and I think, well, actually that was a really positive thing, because it forced me to come out of my comfort zone and do things that perhaps I was too scared to do. But I had to do it because obviously I was the sole, provider for a young family. But I'm looking back so glad about those things, because that is how I discovered who I am and what I'm capable of. And that's why I'm such a big advocate for entrepreneurship for women, because I really believe that we all have the power to achieve incredible success in our lives, but we need to believe it and we need to take the action towards whatever goal it is that we want to achieve. That's from my own perspective, and I don't know what you feel about that.
I completely agree with you. There are two things that I absolutely love from a personal growth, and they are physical training and entrepreneurship. Both of them force you out of your comfort zone. Both of them require resilience. Both of them force you to grow and adapt. And they are just huge learning lessons every day. And they, as you said, it makes you realize who you really are. You know, you're no longer Elliot's mum.
Yeah.
You are also that, but you are so much more than that as well.
And also, it feeds your confidence, isn't it? If you have got low confidence, which I did, you know, I when I was at school, I was literally scared of my own shadow. I was too scared to speak to anybody. So, you know, doing a podcast and having a YouTube channel is a huge leap forward for me. But,
congratulations.
Thank you very much. But it's doing these things, isn't it, that really builds our confidence, because it actually, by taking these steps, moving forward, coming out of your comfort zone, doing some of the things that perhaps you are scared of, and then you suddenly realise, wow, you know, I can do this. And then it sort of boosts your confidence. And really then helps you move forward to the next goal that you want to achieve, or the next scary thing that you want to tackle. Do you agree with that as well? Have you had
Absolutely, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Each thing is kind of, you take a lesson, you learn a lesson, and then it's this, you've overcome the inertia and the fear, so you're able to get to a higher level and a higher level. It's kind of like if you think of life as a computer game or something, and you're getting to higher and higher levels. So these processes where we grow, the things that are really pushing us out of our comfort zone, they're almost getting us to higher and higher levels in this game.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like how you referred to did you call it strength training? What did you call it? Yeah. So I think also it's very important to have a balance. You know, obviously this podcast is about, you know, really going from victim to victress and sort of overcoming challenges to creating incredible success in your lives. But it's very important to have a balance, you know. And I personally, before I became ill with my brain hemorrhage, I used to get up and run 10k every morning. And I think it's so important to be looking after your body as well as your mind. You know, you've got to look after both elements, haven't you? You can't just sort of focus in isolation on one.
Correct. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, definitely. So I think that's really important as well, because there's no point, I don't think you can have a healthy mind without sort of also focusing on having a healthy body. Even if that's a half an hour walk with the dog, which for me, since sort of being ill, is pretty much all I do. But it's being outside, it's having the exercise, being out with nature as well. It's and the things that make you feel good. So obviously things that make me feel good and positive would perhaps be something different to you. I mean, I probably couldn't do the strength training that you're talking about. Sounds fascinating. But obviously we need to also find other things, don't we, in our lives that give us sort of peace and harmony as well, whatever that may be. Absolutely,
very important. But I would also say that on top of what you've said, physical training, moving your body, and not necessarily hardcore strength training or running, nothing like that, but there's a lot of research to show that certain traumas get caught up in our bodies, so we can release those through movement, and it might be just dancing or just moving in nature, but actually moving your body is incredibly important for your emotional stability and health, as well as your physical health. So I think it's super important to get some sort of movement into your life. So yeah, you're not necessarily has to be hardcore training or anything, but certainly move your body. And there's so many physical reasons we talk about to do this, but there's a lot of emotional and mental reasons to do it too.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And I know certainly for me, I have to start my morning with just getting outside. It's only walking my dog. It's nothing energetic, but it sort of sets me up for the morning. You know, you're out in nature and it sort of clears your head. It gives you thinking time and things like that. So I think it's important to sort of build something into your life as well that's going to give you that sort of feeling of positivity as well. You know, something that makes you feel positive and that makes you feel good, really, whatever that happens to be for you. Because I know in this sort of 10-step process that you talk about, which I think is part of your course, which I believe is called Thinking into Results, it's about, obviously developing your attitude, rewriting your narrative and things like that. But are there any other sort of steps that we've missed out on that you think that people need to go through to sort of really achieve the success in their lives that they are hoping for?
So I really do believe everything is habit-based. That's how we change our behaviour. And understanding that our thoughts are not necessarily true and we can adopt whatever narrative is empowering to us is so important. But I think it's really also important that you ask for help if you need it. Talk to people you trust, talk to people who have been through this before. Because I think so many people hold on to, there's a big movement at the moment talking about shame, and people hold on to their stories because they're ashamed, and it's so damaging when we hold on to the things that are really important to us because of fear that we're going to be judged, when actually, so many people have gone through this stuff. There are very few problems that are completely unique to you. No matter how alone you feel right now, there are very few problems that you are on your own with, and you can talk to people and ask for help. And I really encourage people to go and do so.
And I think also that can really inspire other people that perhaps are going through the same thing, that think that they're all alone as well. It's going to inspire other people that they're not alone.
Exactly.
Yeah, definitely. So could you possibly, I know that, I've just briefly mentioned the course that you've got, Thinking into Results. Could you just sort of tell us a little bit more about that? And also, if people want to find out more about you, how they can go about doing that at the end of this show?
Definitely. So Thinking into Results is a course I teach. It's a 6-month intensive. It gets you a lot of clarity on your goals, and it addresses these behaviors that are holding you back, these self-image problems, these limiting beliefs. We really dive into the subconscious mind and rewrite basically the programming you have there, so that you can start moving in the direction that you really want to go since you have that new clarity. And to find out more, you can visit my website, which is mariamarklove.com. So that's just my name, .com.
Okay, lovely. And I think you were going to put together an infographic, weren't you, to talk about these sort of 10 steps in a little bit more detail, which I can link to in the show notes. Is that there's going to be an infographic? Is that correct? Which people
Absolutely,
can download?
Yeah. By the time people listen to this, it should already be there. So yeah, infographic, the 10 steps that we've been discussing today about how to really get clarity and start changing.
That is fantastic. Well, thank you so much for your time, Maria. I really appreciate it. I was, as I said, when I met you at the Youthpreneur Summit, I was fascinated to talk to you more, because this is something that I really believe in. And when you told me that you were a mental resilience coach, I was like, wow, that's, I think that's something we all need in our lives, really. So this is fascinating. I'm certainly going to be going and checking out your course as well. But so thank you so much for joining me, and I look forward to connecting with you again very soon in the future.
Well, thank you so much, Michelle. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye, Maria. And to you, my wonderful Victress FM listeners, thank you so much for hanging out with us. I have absolutely loved this episode with Maria, and I hope that you have too. Don't forget, if you want to find out more about Maria, please either check out the show notes or head over to victrousentrepreneurs.com, where all of our podcast guests are featured on our Victress FM blog. Until next week, Victresses, stay victorious.
You're listening to Victress FM. Victress Entrepreneurs, for women who are victorious in business and in life.